the atheist job is not to prove everything you believe wrong, right? That's their desire. But what they try to do is put a chink in your armor. And I don't mean a small Chinese man. I mean to put a little break in the armor of God to let doubt creep in like a cancer and corrupt all of your faith, right? So they will go to one thing to another and constantly just test, oh, you have an answer for this? Well, they will move immediately. As soon as they realize you have an answer for this, they will move immediately to another attack until they find something you don't have an answer for, right? You could have an answer for 1,000 of their questions, and it won't convince them that, wow, there's an answer for everything. It will convince them to look for another attack vector. And if they find something where you don't have an answer, what you should be reliant on is the fact that you had an answer for the 1,000 other things. Because if the Bible is true, there is an answer for everything. And over time, you should come to realize that, oh my gosh, there's been an answer for every single thing that I've looked up that makes sense rationally, logically, and in the world of reality. And when they don't have an answer, what do? We'll figure that out eventually. That's okay. So they have this, and they accuse us of the God of the gaps theory, when they have the we'll figure it out eventually of the gaps theory, and they fall back on that without without an ounce of irony, without a modicum of hypocrisy. They will fall back on we'll know someday. Sure, it seems impossible now, but someday someone will figure out how something impossible became impossible. That's their entire. I'm sorry, I hate to boil it down and make it sound like it is that simple, but it is that simple. But because we believe that the Bible is from God, they only have to find one thing that can get in there and drop a seed of doubt for you to water. Because you're, gosh dang it, I don't know the answer to that question. And then you forget that every time you've researched an answer, just like we did the other day, right? It had been my entire Christian walk that I'd never delved into that question of, Jesus says some of you here will not taste of death until they see basically the end days. And I'm like, I never bothered looking up the Greek for that. And then I looked up the Greek. You know where the answer was? The answer was in the Greek. The answer was in the original thing Jesus said. The original thing Jesus said was, some particular person here will not taste of death until he sees the end days. Who was that? It was John. John saw, otherwise John couldn't have written Revelation, right? But Jesus was telling him that when he was still alive. So that was a prophecy of John towards the end of his life, probably 30 years later, roughly 30 years later. 60 years later. I'm sorry, roughly 60 years later. And then John was teleported, time swapped into the. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how, but John's soul, conscious or physical being, I have no idea. It says he saw a vision, so it's probably just his soul was taken to the future, to our future even, to see the end of time, the end of the age, not the end of time. And it's like, wow, if all of the Bibles translated into English had just translated some, the word for some, correctly in the Greek, which is some specific person here, which means one person. One, not some. One of you particular people is what he was saying. And it's like, wow, there's an answer. It's like there's an answer for everything. I grant you, you may not know the answer. You may not know the answer for 30 years. Like this guy. But there's an answer for everything. And I that's how I kind of cemented my faith, really, when I came to the conclusion that, wow, this Bible proves itself from outside of time and space, and the author claims to be God. So there should be an answer for everything. There should be a logical, rational answer for everything, right? If that's the case. Discounting metaphysics and miracles. I'm not saying they're illogical. I'm saying they're not, and I'm not saying they're irrational. I'm saying they're, okay, so not discounting. Never mind. I'm not discounting miracles. God, who makes the rules, can bend the rules. That's God.